Sleep is absolutely critical. It is crucial to every part of your health, from your brain and your mood to your immune system and your heart. And yet, so many of us don't get enough. Tonight, we're going to cover what happens when your sleep is lacking, the connection between nutrition and sleep, tips for better rest, and how to know if you might have a sleep disorder. So, let me introduce you to our panel of experts. Dr. Heather Giannini, I think I said that right.
Nailed it.
Dr. Giannini is a certified pulmonologist at Virtua's Pulmonology and Sleep Medicine. Her research expertise spans predictive technologies in critical illness, genomic, am I saying that right?
Some basic science research.
Science research with a
Science.
fancy name of lung cancer and molecular diagnostics for sepsis, which she has published in leading medical journals. She was born and raised in New Jersey, loves the Jersey Shore and spending time with her husband and 3 children. Again, badass, right? And Erin Alexander is a registered dietitian specializing in weight management through traditional medical and surgical approaches. She earned a degree from the University of Delaware and completed her dietetic internship with Inspira. Erin is passionate about helping individuals make sustainable lifestyle changes that improve both their health and overall quality of life. Welcome, welcome, welcome to Badass Ladies. We love you.
Hi.
I'm obsessed with this. This is going to be so good. So many people struggle with this. I think a
Yeah.
lot of people just say, sleep, it's fine, it's fine. And it just has so much to do with your overall wellness. So we're going to start with the basics. Can you explain why sleep is so important and what happens when we don't get enough of it? Dr. Giannini, if you want to kick it off.
Yeah, sure. No problem. I see a lot of patients every day almost in my clinic for sleep issues. And, sleep is really essential. It's a critical part of allowing the brain and the body to slow down, engaging in processes of recovery, promoting physical and mental performance so that you have a restful, restorative night to prepare yourself for, another full day the next day. Everyone's living busy lives. We know that how important sleep is just to get through the next day. I would say when it comes to goals for sleep, I usually advise about 7 to 9 hours of sleep. Some people need a little bit less, some people need a little bit more, and that's sort of personalized based on who you are and what kind of sleep you need. And when you don't get enough, we notice things like brain fog and struggling with focus, struggling with kind of finer tasks. The immune system can also take a hit, and you can be more susceptible to getting sick and getting even like subtle viruses or things like that. And then we've noticed appetite regulation changes, sometimes strain on real like organ systems, heart and lungs. And then skin health can also suffer at times, accelerating aging. Wrinkles and skin care are super important to get really good night's sleep.
When do you think it starts, right? Because when you think of like being a baby and even a toddler and how like napping and sleeping and rest is so important, you think it's just that like adulthood gets thrown at you and there's so much going on at any given time. And people are just like, that's the thing that I just don't have time for.
Yeah, and I think it's starting even sooner than that now, right? We're seeing kids and adolescents with anxiety and issues around getting enough sleep even when they're younger and trying to make sure that they're getting enough, sleep and then getting to school early and early days. And the days start really early. I mean, some of us, our days are starting in the dark,
Oh my
right?
goodness. Friends of mine who have kids, they have to like be at the bus at like 7:10. I'm like,
Yeah.
this is wild, right?
Yeah.
We're gonna get to all of this because it's just all so fascinating. So, Erin, obviously, what role does diet play when we're talking about how well we rest?
Yeah, no, diet plays a pretty significant role in your sleep quality, and then it also influences either how quickly you fall asleep, how deeply you sleep, how refreshed you feel when you wake up in the morning. I kind of look at it as like a cyclical relationship where a healthy diet promotes good sleep quality, which in turn helps to reinforce good dietary habits. So, overall dietary patterns can affect sleep quality, and It contributes to insomnia. So it's really just beneficial, in my opinion, to work on overall healthy eating habits and lifestyle changes to, help improve all qualities of life, including sleep. It's been shown like a lot of diets high in fiber and low in saturated fats are associated with deeper, better sleep. And then things like timing of food and drinks matters. Eating certain foods closer to bedtime can interfere with sleep quality. The types of foods we're eating too play a really big role in, how well we sleep and how easy it is to sleep.
And I also think too, and I'm sure we're going to tap into this more, is that like one of my favorite things is how, there's over 7 billion people in the world. There's only one with our genetic makeup, right? Which is like so powerful. And so listening to your body is so important because what you may be able to do or what I may be able to do is completely different, right? So like, and I also think it's interesting because like there's somebody that caffeine could affect you so significantly, but a friend could have an espresso after dinner and it's totally fine. So it's like you can't compare yourself. You have to really be in tune with your own body. And that's something that I love to talk to doctors and health specialists about too, because so many people are so like, oh, well, my neighbor, she said don't do this. And you're like, well, unfortunately, Susan doesn't know everything, and I think that's really interesting, which I'm sure, we're going to get into as well. But like, and I think too, when you think about people like kind of what we were talking about before, their schedules are so busy and they're like, oh, I'll just go through the drive-through. And then they're not thinking how that is going to affect their sleep because they're not making sleep a priority. And I think that that's one of the beautiful things about this seminar is that we're going to talk about making yourself and sleep a priority. So let's talk about practical steps. So what are some practical steps people can take to get a better night's sleep? Like just kind of, we'll start there for now, Dr. Giannini, and then we'll kind of work up to a lot of different questions people have.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of layers to sort of optimizing your sleep. And so the place I always start is like the foundation of your sleep, which we call sleep hygiene in sleep medicine. But really, it comes down to making your environment like the absolute best place for sleep. And this even starts back when, baby and toddler years when you're trying to create that ideal environment for an infant to sleep in, right? So the room is really dark and cool and quiet, right? You're not in a hot temperature, you're not in too cold. You kind of find that happy medium, comfortable pajamas, and you are maintaining a consistent sleep cycle where a sleep timer where like you would try to go to sleep at the same time each night and try to wake up at the same time each night to kind of create a consistent cycle for that. I always recommend that screens and technology should be really limited before bed and kind of like leading up to bed. And I think a lot of people are guilty, of the scroll in the bed, which I think we were all pretty familiar with. But that really can impair the onset of sleep because of the light that's coming out of that device. So I say no screens, no tech in the room if possible. Relaxing, calming activities at night can be super helpful to create kind of a nighttime, bedtime routine, reading books, listening to meditations. And then kind of the lead up to sleep is always the activities you've done during the day, right? And what Erin was talking and speaking to a little bit before about nutrition. So making sure you had an active day, moving your body, exercise if you can, or at least, maintaining that activity and then avoiding things like caffeine straight before bed, like you said.
And some people could be like, I love spicy food, doesn't affect me at all. And then there's other people that they know it affects their
Yeah,
stomach. I think that, and that might be coming up, but talking about people getting up in the middle of the night to go to the restroom, right? So it's like, if you know that there's a food that's going to affect you, like, don't eat that before bed.
right.
You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
you have to know yourself and
Yeah.
start to learn your patterns and be mindful of how it's affecting you.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, Erin, this is so perfect. Let's talk about the surprising ways sleep affects our metabolism and our food choices.
Yeah, so I mean, looking at it kind of with the scientific backing, poor sleep can really affect key appetite regulating hormones. So there's the hunger hormone, it's called ghrelin. So if we're not sleeping well, that hunger hormone can increase. So we're feeling hungrier the next day. And then there's the fullness hormone called leptin. That's that feeling of satiety, satiation. We're satisfied after eating. We don't need to go back for more. That hormone decreases when we're not really getting a restful night of sleep. So that kind of imbalance, makes you feel hungrier and less satisfied after eating. Really, that kind of, leans towards heightening that craving for higher fat, higher sugar, more processed foods. And that can feel a little bit more rewarding when we're not sleeping well. And that in turn leads to overeating, excess calorie intake, which really just makes it harder for weight loss or weight maintenance, whatever, your goals may be. And then, of course, there's the other hormone to look at, which is cortisol. And sleep deprivation can increase that a lot as well. That will, increase insulin levels, promote that belly fat, that visceral fat accumulation, which is a precursor to a lot of other disease states that we don't want to run into. So really just making sure that we're getting that restful sleep can help affect how we're eating the next day. And that's where that kind of cyclical relationship comes in that I like to talk about.
And you said in regards to like cravings, like a lot of times if people don't get really good sleep, like you're almost craving is it to fill a void? Like what causes the cravings, or is it just the hormone imbalance?
It's kind of both. It's that hormone imbalance. It's kind of that like the increased hunger hormones and the decreased fullness feeling makes those higher sugar, higher fat foods feel a little bit more rewarding. Like you said, a bad night of sleep, we might just not feel like cooking and go through that drive-through, but also kind of that notion of what that higher fat food might be would be a little bit more rewarding in that sense after a night of not really sleeping so well.
And I could speak from experience. So before I was on XTU, I was on a station called Mix 106, which is now Roomba 106. And I did mornings for almost 8 years. And when you do mornings, you have to get up at 4 a.m., 4:30 a.m. And I loved my job. And when I would wake up in the morning, I'd be so excited. But I maybe got 4 or 5 hours of sleep at night. So then it became about napping. And then my schedule was upset. Then it was around napping. And I have hypothyroid. And so my cortisol levels were like through the roof. And it wasn't that I was like, and then I would start to feel like almost nauseous if I didn't get the right amount of sleep. And I didn't really get like how it was also connected, because it wasn't like I couldn't sleep. It was just that I had events at night and I was doing fun things. And then all of a sudden I have to get up at 4 a.m. And I still have PTSD from having to do the morning because I just am a sleeper. Like I am. And even like flying, maybe this will come up too, but like if you ever have a chance to like fly to Europe and you fly overnight, that's something that I think is really interesting too about traveling. Like I really notice if I don't sleep, like I feel nauseous. And that's what causes that?
I would also think it's similar to the hormone changes like Erin was describing. And also just that, I mean, sleep it is not something that is optional. It is not something we could live without. It is not something that you will not do. So people who get really anxious and worried about not falling asleep, you're going to fall asleep. Your body physically requires it, physically needs it. If you sleep deprivation is a form of torture. And so, you really the body starts to get very sick as you start to have kind of major shifts in the sleep patterns, and the hormone shifts can be really pretty significant.
Yeah, it really is. Again, and I think women probably feel it so much because our hormones, again, another thing that women have to deal with. We talk about this all the time. We're superheroes. We should have
lucky.
Built-in capes. My God. All right. So obviously one of the most popular topics that we have received is about sleep aids. What sleep aids do you recommend, and are they safe to take long-term? Dr. Giannini.
Sure. So first, I think when it comes to sleep aids, it's a very personal type of a decision because there's a lot that factors into everybody's medications, right? A lot of people are already on a lot of medications. And so I have to take that into account whenever I'm making any of these kinds of recommendations. So in broad strokes, I think sleep aids, I would recommend not for long-term use, that they would be better for kind of short-term use or for instances when, like you just described, your sleep patterns have been significantly disrupted, right? You took a red eye over to Europe and now you take a little nap that afternoon to try to get through the day, and then you want to fall asleep that night to try to get back onto a normal cycle. So that's a good moment, say, for a sleep aid. When I am recommending something that is a sleep aid, I typically start with melatonin because it is a sleep aid that you can buy over the counter. The data has shown that it's really doesn't have a lot of side effects. I think it's become pretty well known, and kind of a lot of people have an understanding of what it is and that you can use it pretty safely. The thing about melatonin is that I think a lot of people don't really know how to use it. Are you familiar with melatonin?
I've never taken it actually, but I know I'm always a weirdo where like I just like kind of you said like I just want my body to like do it, but then I can't sleep on flights and I'm like why am I torturing myself? Like I should just take the melatonin and sleep and then you know what I mean? But I obviously I've heard of it and my friend Jamie who travels a lot, he's like, "Dude, just take it. Like it's a game changer."
So some people do feel like it's a game changer, and other people are like, this thing didn't touch me.
Yeah,
But the interesting thing about melatonin as a sleep aid, it's not really a sleeping pill. So it's not going to knock you out. If you take it
right.
at 10 or 11 p.m. when you're laying there and your mind is racing and you really want something to put you to sleep, melatonin's not the answer. The melatonin is to help you establish those circadian rhythms. So you want to take it around 5 or 6 p.m. when your body is starting to prepare for sleep. So I think that that's one of the most common misconceptions that I see when my patients come and say, I'm trying to use melatonin or I'm trying to find something to help me go to sleep. Then we have to start really establishing sleep rituals, right? So if you take your melatonin at 5 or 6 p.m., then when you get to 9 or 10 p.m., your brain is prepared for sleep onset.
I did
So
not
this is
know
just a
that.
very
That's so
different thing.
interesting. This is why we
Mhm.
do these health chats. See?
Exactly.
I love
But at
it.
the same time, there are a lot of other medications that are I lose an ear pod. There are a lot of other medications that people do use. I think you just have to worry and watch out for things like grogginess and using them a lot and being um, taking them too often and things like that. So I do try to counsel towards sleep hygiene first before using sleep aids.
Because there's obviously over-the-counter sleep aids, but then there is prescription sleep aids too,
Yeah.
right? Okay.
Hmm.
And
But
so
ultimately, oh, sorry.
no, I
Yeah.
was going to say, so you're basically, you want to talk to your doctor first, right? To be like,
Yes.
I'm having some issues, and then have that open line of communication to see like what you need.
Right. Because we do know that the very best thing for insomnia for people to improve their sleep is meeting with a physician to see and talk about cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, which is by far and away the most evidence-based treatment for sleep.
Wow. So it's basically like you're trying to figure out what's causing the lack of sleep.
Correct.
The brain
Hmm.
is so fascinating because it's just
Right?
like, and
Yeah.
I think it's also interesting too because we live in a society for the longest time that has encouraged people to go, 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 push, 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 push. I think we're at a point now where we are encouraging people like to the mindfulness, the slowness, the rest, take your vacation days, right? Because I think a lot of people, especially women, especially working moms, you thought that you just like had to do everything, had to push through. And so you always put yourself last. And sleep was just like, I got to do the laundry. I got to help with the science project. I got to take care of this last minute email. And so I understand how all of a sudden it becomes a snowball effect, which obviously the two of you see probably on a daily basis when you're talking to patients.
Mhm.
Um, so
Yes.
Erin, let's talk about some from a nutrition standpoint, if there are foods or natural sources that can help the body produce melatonin and support sleep. I know I've seen I'm a TikTok girly, so like is it the tart cherry juice with the
Yeah,
magnesium? Like
the
I'm sure
sleepy
that
girl
is that real?
mocktail.
Is that a thing?
Yeah. Yeah, so food-based approach is a gentle, kind of natural way to support sleep, but really we want to work on overall lifestyle habits to help with sleep. There are foods like that contain the melatonin in there, so things like tart cherries, so those sleepy mocktails with
Yeah.
the tart cherry juice, maybe some kombucha, maybe some magnesium powder, things like that can help promote better sleep. But we really want to look at overall composition of diet. Is what we're eating throughout the day really nutrient dense and benefiting us to promote that consistent eating, kind of consistent routine, which I think, going off of what Dr. Giannini said, having that circadian rhythm, that consistent routine is really important from a diet standpoint too, to help us, stay in that balanced state that we want to be in. So yes, foods that have melatonin in there, things like tart cherries, kiwis, fatty fishes, those are all things that can be beneficial to helping us sleep, but are also really more beneficial towards having that balanced diet, which we want.
So I see we have our notes here and it says milk. So that whole like wives' tale of drinking warm milk, is that a real thing?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like drinking a warm, like chamomile tea before bed.
Yeah.
That kind of warmth
Okay.
is
Yeah.
it's like
Just like,
relaxing, right?
yes. Yeah, yeah, that
Yeah,
makes sense. It's
yeah.
so funny because you're like fatty fish. You're like, have some anchovies and some warm milk. That'll put me right
Yeah,
to
yeah.
bed.
And that's a big thing too, because what we're eating right before bed can affect how well we're sleeping too. So we don't necessarily want to eat something super high fat, high protein that's going to take longer to digest right before bed. But if we're having that throughout the day, we're getting that little bit of melatonin in throughout the day that can help.
Yeah. I mean, you two would probably know this better, but my brother, so my niece is 3, she'll be 4 this week. And she, even when she was from time she was little, she was this amazing sleeper. So they finally get her the big girl bed. And there were some nights she'd sleep through the night and it wouldn't be a big deal. Other nights she was getting up and it was, my brother's a teacher. So like he's kind of plugged. And so it was like kind of driving him crazy. And he's like, I feel like there's a pattern. He all of a sudden realized it was the days that she was like eating more junk, like if she was like at a birthday party or like out and she was like at a picnic and having like ice cream or cookies, that's when her sleep was all over the place. And it was the days that she was eating like normal, like her school days. And so now, and they've really noticed, like they don't want, my brother's like, I don't want to be that weird parent that like says no sugar, but he just, him and my sister-in-law now are just more cognitive of like,
Yeah.
oh, she's only 3, almost 4. And they really notice like, the days that she had more junk food, the worse she slept. And I was like, I'm assuming from a doctor and a dietitian point of view, it makes sense.
Absolutely, yeah. And especially with that, sugar, it's something that maybe at nighttime, if we're having that sugary snack right before bed, that can cause spikes and drops in your blood sugar levels, which while you're sleeping can be happening and causing that waking up throughout the night kind of feeling too. Just because you're going to sleep doesn't mean that your metabolism is shutting off and
Right.
not still processing that sugar.
Right. How long, Erin, have you seen improvements when people change what they eat in their sleep? Have you seen it? Like, how long does it usually take?
Yeah, I mean, some improvements with your diet can be noticed in a few days, a couple of weeks, but more significant changes, lasting lifestyle changes, maybe working on the consistency of how we're eating. Are we having breakfast, lunch, and dinner? Are we eating within, our a typical 12-hour eating window of being awake? Kind of doing all of the changes that we can be doing to improve our overall quality of life will help affect those lasting sleep habits long term.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So, a common thread and among the questions here we have pertains to sleep is to sleep interruptions. And a lot of women are waking up through the night for various reasons. Is that normal? And they want to know if that is continuous or can they stop it? So,
Yeah.
what is your experience of like why that's happening? I know we can talk about a lot of times people, women, especially menopause or pregnancy, you know,
Yeah.
Dr.
I've
Giannini.
I've seen a lot of, yeah, I see a lot of people for this. And I think the common thread I hear from all of them is like the general frustration with that, right? They're just and I think, is it, so the first question, I guess you said, is it normal?
Yeah.
And waking up a couple times in the night, not totally abnormal, right? Especially if you can re-engage in sleep relatively quickly. Try not to look at the clock. That clock will be activating. You'll start to put in your mind, oh, it's this time, and now I'm stressing out because I'm awake at 3 o'clock in the morning. So right. So if you can re-engage sleep quickly, that's great. The bigger question I usually try to get to the heart of is like, why are we waking up multiple times in the night, right? Are you waking up because you have to go to the bathroom? Are you waking up because racing thoughts are jumping into your head and then you can't turn them off? Are you waking up because you are having some coughing and choking sensation that when you come to, you're like gasping for breath? And all of those sort of get to why you had the interruption in the first place, so that then we can target that. And this is all why, sleep medicine is such an interesting field and how it can be so important to really diving into what's happening to a particular person at any time.
Yeah, that's so true because you're right. You could wake up for so many different reasons, right? And so
Yeah.
whether it is just, I mean, listen, I drink so much water and I had to realize like you can't be drinking this at 10:30. Like this is not right. But it's just like, oh,
Would not recommend.
right. Like I try to drink a lot. I mean,
Don't take your Stanley to bed.
yeah. And so it wasn't until, and again, weirdly enough, I have hypothyroid, so I have to take my medicine on an empty stomach, and I would always wake up at like 5, and now my body just like wakes up. But I'm very fortunate, knock on wood, that I just wake up, use the bathroom, and I'm able to go back to sleep. But there's sometimes whether you're in a weird space and I think that that's so true. You have to figure out the why or the how are you waking up. And, there are so many sleep conditions with sleep apnea, obviously, that these are really important health issues to why you could be waking up. And you're right in regards to why sleep is so fascinating, because you have like the mental side of sleep, but then you also have the physical side of sleep.
Right. Right. And I think that's sort of, those are why I think two of the big tenets of sleep medicine come down to, cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, which is a way to really understand what is the underpinnings of your sleep patterns, how to practice the best sleep kind of hygiene and the best sleep practices that you can do to support your body. And then also, if there are common interruptions, like finding either a primary care doctor or a sleep specialist, somebody who you can talk to work through those to understand more about them. And so, I think really digging into those symptoms to really treat them appropriately is super important. And now, sleep studies are much easier since we can do them at home often. You can be in your own bed with a kit that you do at home. And then, we can get really great data from those studies.
Yeah. So we talked about sleep hygiene, going to bed and waking up at the same time, steady routine before bed, avoiding alcohol, cigarettes, big meals, getting outside for daily sunlight. That's a big thing. A lot of people from home, you know what I mean? And like going outside, physical activity, blackout curtain, sleep mask, earplugs, all that kind of stuff. And
exactly.
But then let's talk about the big thing, which is, sleep disorders. And so how can someone tell if they may have a sleep disorder and when they should go see a specialist?
Yeah, so I usually look for some kind of classic warning signs or red flags. Some of them tend to be loud snoring. So if a partner or someone who is sleeping somewhat nearby says that, oh, you're snoring really, really loud, that can be a red flag. Pauses in breathing, or if someone actually sees you stop breathing in your sleep and then is like, wait a minute, let me shake this person, wake them up. That's called an apnea or a pause in your breath. Gasping for air can also be pretty concerning. Those are all suggestive of sleep apnea and that you're maybe not getting the breath that you're trying to get when you're sleeping. Otherwise, I think about daytime sleepiness, sore throat, or really dry, really flaking like dryness to the mouth, or thirst. Morning headaches I worry about as well. When I hear about every morning I wake up with a headache, that makes me concerned. Trouble concentrating with focus and brain fog, night sweats. And anytime you're having excessive fatigue during the day, you sit down on the couch and you're out. You sit in your car, you want to go to sleep. Like all of those things are pretty concerning. So when you put all those together, I get more and more worried about that.
So let's talk about snoring really quick, because I think I hear it from a lot of people, especially friends of mine, their husbands snore, they're sleeping in separate rooms. Is there a certain type of snoring for sleep? Could you have a crazy loud snore and just be a snorer? Or does every type of snore mean you have a sleeping disorder? And if you have sleep apnea, can you have sleep apnea and not snore?
Yes, they don't have to exist together. You
Yeah.
can snore and have no sleep apnea, and I'm sorry. Because that's a tricky one. And or you can have sleep apnea without someone. So sometimes people who have sleep apnea, they don't even know that they snore because no one is there to tell them. So they may not have a partner in bed, or they might not have somebody nearby in a room, or they just don't snore and they do have clinically significant sleep apnea. Yep.
Wow. So you could have sleep
Yeah.
apnea. I feel like everybody always talks about sleep apnea and it's like, you know, my auntie talking about my Uncle Phil that she would have to like sleep in the bathroom. You know what I mean? You get the CPAP
Yeah.
machine. Um, but yeah, like I think that people really, that's a big, big thing that you may have other symptoms and have sleep
Yes.
apnea, but it's not necessarily snoring.
Correct. Yep. You're
Yeah.
right.
Which is really so many pulmonologists specialize in sleep medicine and in Virtua, I think a lot of people don't realize that pulmonology and sleep. Could you speak a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So I think, pulmonology and sleep go well together, mainly because, pulmonologists are experts in how air really moves in and out of the body, right? We deal with the volumes and the pressures that go into the lungs. And that's how we also analyze your lung health. And that's really how a CPAP or a continuous positive pressure machine works by applying a little bit of pressure to stent the airway back open when it's sort of collapsing up here in the soft palate and in the areas of the lung of the neck where the tissues really just relax and then you kind of lose the airway in your sleep. So we use a little bit of air with this CPAP machine in order to pop that airway back open and maintain the airflow going in and out.
Okay.
And I think that brings in a lot of why pulmonology, the movement of air in and out of the lungs, also deals with sleep medicine.
Yeah, I guess I always thought it was like ear, nose, and throat, maybe more than I
And they
thought.
do it too, actually.
Okay.
They do sleep apnea as well. They just approach it sometimes a little differently. They do CPAP as well, but ear, nose, and throat also can look at sleep apnea.
Yeah. Now, Erin, has there people have come to you? Have you seen like with significant diet and food and sleep changes like that people say that their sleep has drastically improved?
Yeah, I have patients a lot of times too, patients who are coming to me over, a period of time with goals of weight loss, and we're working on those goals and we're seeing, the positive changes and the weight loss. And over time too, they share that they feel like their sleep has gotten a lot better. Sometimes they say they don't need their mask as much or as often anymore. So I've definitely seen that improvement too. Just making overall changes to their lifestyle and their dietary habits. And then in turn, it affects those positive changes with their sleep as well.
So you could get off of the CPAP machine.
And I have seen it. Yeah.
Okay.
It takes a pretty significant amount of weight loss. And it is unique to certain people and the reason why they're having apnea. Some people, it's just anatomy. They aren't even overweight. They just have anatomy that obstructs when they sleep. And so no amount of weight loss would be even recommended for people in certain circumstances. But in other patients who lose a very significant amount of weight, I have seen their sleep study go from, something like moderate to no longer having sleep apnea.
Wow. This we're going to kind of transition a little bit into the Q&As because we have some questions coming in and we have some really great questions here. And this actually is a perfect transition where somebody said, I have sleep apnea. I'm considering a GLP-1 for weight loss. Could that help?
Yeah, I'm actually seeing a lot more patients for this since one of the GLP-1 medications was just approved for obstructive sleep apnea. So just earlier, I think it was just in 2024, a medication called tirzepatide, or most people know it as Zepbound, was then approved by the FDA for obstructive sleep apnea for that indication. And so I've seen increasingly more and more patients coming to me looking for this, and I think it's been a great sort of rollout. And I do definitely see a benefit. Sometimes it's not that they come all the way off of CPAP, but the severity of their sleep apnea with significant weight loss does come down, which is also great. Better
Yeah.
for, the heart and the brain and for decreasing the risk of all the downstream side effects of sleep apnea.
Well, and I don't think people realize that you could not be overweight and still have sleep apnea, right? I
Mm-hmm.
think that's really, really important that people could be having sleep issues and not realize they're like, oh, I'm thin, and it didn't even cross their minds, and
Right.
I think that that's so important. And then also, with taking a GLP-1, Erin, I'm assuming like just because you're taking a GLP-1, you still have to like eat the right foods, correct?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I look at it kind of, it's like a toolbox, right? So if
Yeah.
our goal is weight loss or losing weight, getting to a healthy weight, medication is a tool, but so is your nutrition. So is your exercise, your hydration, your sleep quality. So yeah, absolutely. GLP-1s assisting and aiding in losing weight can definitely help with that. But going back to kind of, adapting and adjusting all of those lifestyle habits to get you there. You have to be eating right on the GLP-1. You have to be hydrating. You still have to be exercising so you're not losing muscle mass. So there's a lot of factors. We want to utilize all of those tools to get to that goal, not just relying on one, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The next question says, how can I naturally speed up my metabolism, lose weight faster? If we had the answer to that, we'd all be billionaires.
Or I wouldn't have a job.
Let me know when you got it.
Yeah, an island somewhere.
Right.
Being like, good luck to the rest of you.
I wish I had that answer. I mean, for starters, when I meet with patients, the first thing I like to do is kind of get a good rundown of what their day looks like, what their eating routine, what they're having throughout the day, their timing of everything. One thing, I always kind of start with is eating at a regular pattern, regular time throughout the day. Having your breakfast, lunch, and dinner, or depending on, what shift you're working, maybe it's a first meal, second meal, third meal, but it's not that I'm just eating once a day, or I'm waiting till the end of the day and eating, a really big meal. That definitely does not help your metabolism. So I think consistency is definitely a key. And also just, keeping track of when you're eating. Try not to eat too late at night or within those 2 to 3 hours of going to sleep at night. And just try and stay consistent with things. That's really my starting point.
Yeah, and I'm sure there's a lot of people that think, oh, well, my whole life I just had coffee in the morning and then I just pick up something for lunch and I think it's also one of those things I always say that like the amazing part about being a human being is that like our brains can learn something new every second of every day and never reach capacity. So like just because you did something for 35 or 40 years doesn't mean that you can't change it.
Absolutely.
And I think that's such a good lesson. And like you said, a patient might come to you and say, oh, this is my plan. And you're like, well, let's try something different. And then all of a sudden that new thing might work for you.
Yeah.
That's why like we have experts who's so good at what they do because they're trying to help you. So obviously lots of questions about sleep aids, melatonin, magnesium, glycinate, THC, which came up a lot. Lunesta. Are any of these safe? Are they all safe, Dr. Giannini? What's the scoop on those?
Yeah, so I think I will kind of stay away from some of the prescription medications because I think those are very tailored to a certain person, and I can't really speak sometimes to their safety profiles based on just knowing that they also interact with certain medications. So what did we say? We said melatonin, magnesium, THC. So melatonin, I think yes, its safety profile has been pretty excellent, but like I said, you got to use it kind of in the right way. Um, and then magnesium glycinate. So there's a lot of different magnesiums out there. And if you go to the supplement store, you'll see magnesium this and that and this and that. So there's magnesium citrate, there's magnesium glycinate, there's magnesium threonate, there's definitely another one. And the best evidence currently is for glycinate. Some of the magnesiums will also have sort of a laxative GI effect. So I would take some caution with those. But I think people who are taking, normal doses of magnesium, I wouldn't say that you can't take it. If it's working for you, I think that's great. And if it's not working for you, you don't have to force the issue. I don't think it's a panacea. Other sleep aids get a little bit more complicated because while certain things may help you fall asleep and increase sort of the sleep onset, or the latency until you fall asleep, which 5 to 15 minutes is about normal. They can actually impair your sleep quality overnight. So those are things like THC and alcohol. And people do use these things for sleep aids, and I think it can be something that people start to use increasingly and rely on more and more. So that's when I would say I do think it's really helpful to meet with someone who's either an expert in sleep or talk with your primary care doc about using those things and seeing if maybe there's a way to either reach for something that's more studied and that we know more about and that maybe doesn't impair your general sleep quality through the night, or work on, cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, and sleep hygiene practices, so that you really build a practice that's lifelong, that's going to see your sleep quality through.
Yeah. And I think that, one of my favorite things about doing these type of panels is that so many people suffer and they're afraid to talk to their doctor about it, right? And it's like the reason that we have these amazing experts is that like they want to help you. And sometimes it could be circumstantial, right? Like something could be happening in your life
Yeah.
and it could just be a temporary thing, but when you talk to a doctor, they might be able to give you some tools for that specific time. I think it doesn't have to be an ongoing thing.
Right. And you can always use some of these tools to get where you need to go and then wean off of them. Or you can be multimodal, where we try to do this and this at the same time, right? We get you into some CBT, the cognitive behavioral therapy sessions, to start working on the practice of sleep. And we're using sleep aids so that you're not also panicked that you're not going to sleep if you're really having a lot of problems. So I think
Yeah.
definitely keeping an open mind and just being honest and sharing how your experience is. We just want to know and understand more about you and what's happening.
100%. How can we fight the desire to want a sugary snack right after dinner, even when you aren't hungry, Erin?
I know,
Guilty.
it's another one of those questions. Yeah. um,
Eat that almond and say, that tastes just like an M&M.
yeah, yep. Just lie to yourself.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, I again kind of go back to just starting with what your day looks like. So, look at what you're eating throughout the day, look at how you're eating throughout the day. Because sometimes those sugary cravings might just be your internal body telling you that you didn't have enough carbs, enough refined or complex carbohydrates throughout the day, enough fiber. Maybe you're lacking in protein. Assess your day, ask yourself why you may be feeling that craving. Did you get a good night of sleep? Did you eat 3 balanced meals today? I also like to ask patients, check in with yourself. Are you really craving it? Are you hungry? Are you just doing it out of habit? Because sometimes we might be able to find the root of the craving, and that can help change the routine, the habits to eliminate those cravings. A lot of times, carbs get a bad rep, and sometimes people say, I didn't eat any carbs, I'm cutting carbs out of my diet, but that's our main source of energy. So if we're not eating those complex carbs that have fiber in there that are going to help us feel full and satisfied throughout the day, we might get to the end of the day and be needing that, chocolate or sugary snack, and that's all we're thinking about. And then we can't go until we, have that, and then, it isn't as beneficial or it isn't as satisfying as we thought it was going to be.
Well, I also think a lot of people, when they hear the term blood sugar or like regulating their blood sugar, they think of diabetes. And it's not. Like all of our blood sugar, when you're talking about like eating the right amount of food and making sure we're getting fiber and protein and complex carbs and fruits and vegetables and all those things, because if you're eating junk, like your blood sugar is going to be all over the place. It doesn't mean that have a blood sugar issue. It just means that's how your body's all working.
Exactly. We all, process sugar the same way. We all kind of need it. We need those carbs. And it doesn't matter, if you do have diabetes or if you don't, how that sugar is really affecting what you're choosing throughout the day.
Yeah. Ooh, I love this one because it's all over TikTok. Mouth taping. I love. So, is mouth taping? Is it recommended? Um, this person says I've been mouth taping for a while, which has helped me. So, what's your take?
Yeah, so I too saw this on the TikToks. I so mouth taping. So it's really tricky because the data for it really isn't really there. So I always try to anchor a lot of what I practice in medicine and my recommendations in studies, right? Do we have any good studies to support this or to refute it? And I think it really ultimately does not pan out as something in the literature, at least, that I could recommend. Now, is it harming? I guess is the other question, right? So, is it helping? Is it harming? And I think in someone with sleep apnea, I think sometimes we do use a little bit like a chin strap when they're on a CPAP thing, and so sometimes it can sort of help with the airflow of the CPAP machine if they're just using nasal pillows. And so that's the one place where I have heard mouth taping as something that has been mildly beneficial. The thing that I think I worry about is if you are somebody who uses your mouth a lot to breathe, and that's sort of just your natural practice, and now you're obstructing that, it could, if anything, be harmful, right? And I just wouldn't want somebody to, ultimately end up in a place where they were having an obstructed airway because of mouth tape. So it's not something that I typically recommend. But I know some people seem to really like it on TikTok, and they're very happy with it. So
Yeah, it's I am a mouth breather, and like I talked to my dentist about it because sometimes my gums get really swollen, and she's just like, but you're a mouth breather for a reason. She's like, and we have mouth breather. It's like your genetic makeup and your bacteria.
yeah,
Like a lot of times it has nothing to do with like she's like, if you've always slept with your mouth open since you were a kid, that's just like how your jaw is. So
right.
it's important not to just believe everything you see on the TikTok.
Correct. Yes. And it's individualized. And if it's not working for you, don't get involved. And I would not, it's not something I would recommend for your sleep quality.
Yeah. We have some questions coming in. So, Erin, the last one that we have here is, should you eat a light meal before bed? I heard yes, and then I heard no.
Yeah, I mean, ideally, we want to try and be done eating within 2 to 3 hours of going to bed, just to allow for proper digestion, So, yes, you do want to make sure you're eating overall throughout the day, consuming enough nutrition, nutrient dense foods so that you're not feeling overly hungry at nighttime. But if you are hungry, you're hungry for a reason. So, I usually tell people to honor that hunger. But again, going back to what your day looks like, and then just trying to make sure that, you're not going to lie down right after eating, because that can definitely not sit well.
Right. And obviously, like the choice of what you eat, like probably eating, a Snickers bar probably might not be like the best choice, right?
Right, exactly. Right. Anything too high in sugar or any, fatty foods too. So anything too high in fat, like ice cream or like dessert like foods, they take longer to digest as well. So those things that we're usually reaching for, maybe chips or something before bed, are usually foods that aren't going to sit well in the stomach and take longer to digest.
Yeah. Okay, so my ENT suggested melatonin to help with a tinnitus. Am I saying that right? Tinnitus issue. One trying to sleep.
Tinnitus.
Tinnitus.
Okay.
Okay. My
Mm-hmm.
primary care doctor said no because I am hypothyroid and melatonin was agnostic to my thyroid.
Woo! That
That's very
question got
specific.
That's a lot.
spicy.
Ooh, that
I
seems
have
like a medical school question.
I have so many more questions.
Yeah.
And what are my answer choices? Um, I have a clinic in Cherry Hill and in Washington Township. You can come on by. We can talk about it more at length.
Yeah.
That's a tricky one. I have not heard of melatonin for tinnitus, if I'm being honest.
What is tinnitus?
Tinnitus is a ringing in the
Oh,
ear.
the ringing in the ears. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay.
Yes, it is a notoriously difficult thing to
Yes.
treat,
Yes.
and very frustrating. So first, I'm really sorry that you're having that because that is a really tough one. And I think ENT would probably be that's where I would refer if I had a patient coming to me with severe tinnitus or with a persistent ringing in their ear. I would definitely send them to ENT. So I would probably punt that question back to our ENT colleagues and see if they had extra thoughts on it. But I have not heard of melatonin being problematic or generally downside.
Yeah. I've been told to take magnesium glycinate to help with sleep, but every time I take it, I'm so groggy the next day. Is there a correct amount?
It sounds like maybe either it's not the right sleep aid for you or you are taking too much. I think I usually don't want people to exceed, I believe it's about like a 400 milligram, 2 to 400 milligrams a night. But anytime you're detecting a grogginess after using a sleep aid, you should either stop or cut it way back, right? That's going to be a good practice. It might not be the right thing for you. You
Mhm.
may, not need extra magnesium, whereby, some other people might, or, may work for some and not for others.
Yeah, that makes sense too.
Yeah.
Why is waking up with a headache concerning?
Great question. So sleep apnea, if you boil it down to kind of what it ultimately is, you're trying to get a breath and you're not getting a breath. And so then the body is not getting the air, the oxygen, that flow of oxygen and carbon dioxide that it would normally be getting during those breaths. There can be a stress response by the body that causes surges in certain hormones, cortisol, and blood pressure, right? Patients with sleep apnea are very high risk for having elevated blood pressure. And sometimes they're on 2, 3 blood pressure medications and they're poorly responsive to their blood pressure medications because every night they go to sleep, they have apnea.
Yeah.
And then those hormones and those stress hormones just surge and then the blood pressure spikes again, and then it's like a vicious cycle. So the headaches can be representative of severe apneas that would be sort of a result of, so that the headaches are a result of sometimes the hormone shifts or the shifts in blood pressures that can occur overnight.
Yeah. Erin, has intermittent fasting, have you seen intermittent fasting helping with sleep apnea?
Yeah, I mean, there's different studies. Again, back to kind of the research about it. There's been studies that show that eating over a shorter period of time and fasting over a longer period of time can help improve sleep. But it can be, I think, again, on a case-by-case basis. You know, we want to work with what maybe your medical history isn't really a great reason for following an intermittent fast. So I like to kind of give a general guideline of a 12-hour eating window, 12 hours of throughout the day, kind of following that like daylight pattern. Eat when the sun comes up and stop eating when the sun sets, kind of is what I like to go for. And then, meeting with, oh, my light keeps going out.
The sunset. There
I know, stop eating.
No more food for us.
Right? But yeah, I kind of, when I meet with people one-on-one, that's kind of what I like to see, what their routine is and what really would work best for them.
Yeah. 2 great last questions. I was always a good sleeper. I am now 70, have a pacemaker for the last 2.5 years. I've been having much trouble sleeping the last year. My diet has not changed. Any thoughts?
So I do think that, for better or worse, we as women, goddesses that we are, we do have a lot of hormone shifts. So 70 it is past the sort of menopausal age. So usually I do see that a lot of my patients have sort of a shift at the menopausal age because the hormones are changing. So their sleep quality changes significantly. The decrease in progesterone can really affect sort of overall sleep patterns, the awakenings at night, and then also can increase the likelihood of sleep apnea. So usually men and women have very different rates of sleep apnea, but that difference goes away after menopause because the decrease in progesterone also makes sort of the muscles here more lax. So is it related to sleep apnea? I don't know. I think I would have a lot more questions also about bringing up the pacemaker. I'm not sure kind of whether or not there's something to that. Are there any other changes in weight, medications, health status in general? There was a reason that there was a pacemaker placed. So I would want to know more about that and why that occurred. And then kind of looking through, I think medications have a huge impact sometimes on our sleep quality. And on our overall experience of the day, which is so important for the sleep quality as well, right? So making sure that we did like a run through all of those medications would be really helpful as well. So I think I have more questions than answers on that. And it would be totally a reasonable thing to talk about. Even at age 70, I'm having patients come to see me for sleep evaluations and get started on CPAP.
Yeah. And I mean, I always say like 70 is the new 55. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like you should feel, and again, why I love doing these so much is because, I think women for so long is like, well, I'm 70. And it's like, no, like go travel, do what you need to do. So it's like sleep's important. If you want to do all these fun things, then, it was my aunt who it just turned 80. She's like, I still think I'm like 50,
Yeah.
I'm like, and right. Cause she wants to do all the things. And I was like, you are, auntie, you are.
Yes, as she should.
Exactly. Okay. I have seasonal allergies. What do you think of taking Benadryl before bedtime to help with sleep and or allergies?
So Benadryl is one of those ones that a lot of people know about it as having this sedating property. And I think honestly, it will probably work A lot of the time, Tylenol PM, right? It's PM because it has Benadryl in it. And so, I don't typically recommend the use of those types of medications for more than just a random one-off if it's needed. I think they are sedating. There's studies that they can affect cognitive performance, and I think that sometimes they can have a kind of a fogginess effect even on the next day. And then some of the medications that are similar to Benadryl and Benadryl itself, some of the other ones include Unisom, and there's a medication that's in NyQuil. They're all antihistamines, and they all have kind of the similar effect, and they all can also interact with other medications as well. So I would say it's not my favorite choice. I think a lot of people reach for it because it's very common and it has had historically a good safety profile, but there are some concerns being raised about it more frequently now.
Makes sense. So before we end, we always like to end with one piece of advice that you would like to share. If there's just one key takeaway for someone struggling with sleep and weight, what would it be?
Yeah, I mean, I'll start. I kind of like to look at it as, again, just a balance. So consume that balanced diet, eat your protein, eat your whole grain carbs, healthy fats, fruits and vegetables. That overall balance and making small changes is what's going to help support your goals, and establish those lifelong healthy habits. So, give yourself some credit. It's not something that's going to happen overnight. But set small goals and work towards them. And once you accomplish them, move on to the next one. It's life is just continuing to build on those goals.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. And honestly, I try to think about, I've been thinking more and more about sleep as a practice as something that we really need to honor and make sure that we're really building good sleep hygiene practices, and recognizing that, we want sleep to come easily. We've been doing it our whole lives. What has changed? But our bodies change as we age, as we change, as other medical issues come up, as we have different things that happen to us in our lives. So give yourself some grace. I always ask my patients who are getting very frustrated and very anxious about their sleep, give yourself some grace and some time to sort of process and learn about your own sleep habits. And if need be, come and see us in the offices for a sleep evaluation so that we can talk through it more and we can be really reassuring and really help you get to the sleep that you need and that you want.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing, and why Virtua is so wonderful is they have all these experts and all these programs. And I think we do live in a society that wants an instantaneous result, right? And sometimes that's really frustrating, like you said, where you're like, I want to feel better now, or I'm just used to doing this. I've been doing this for 50 years. And it's like, you owe it to yourself to feel your best. I think so many people
Right.
don't feel, almost like they feel guilty, like I don't feel good. And it's like, you owe it to yourself to eat your fruits and vegetables, and you owe it to yourself to call the doctor and figure out why you're not sleeping. And Virtue
Yeah.
has these incredible people who want to help you, so like, don't be afraid to ask for help. And I think that
Right.
that's so important. Why I love doing these so much is because you generally want to help people, and there's so many great resources here at Virtua. So once again, you guys are amazing. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for having
Yes,
us.
it's
It's
so
been so much
good.
fun. So great talking to you guys.
Yes. So a recording of this session will be emailed to you in the next week. If you'd like to schedule an appointment for nutrition or pulmonology and sleep medicine, visit virtua.org/RT appointment. And thank you once again for joining us. Thank you so much to Erin and Dr. Giannini for the great chat. Have a fantastic rest of your week, and go Birds and go Phillies.
All
Bye,
right.
guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good